All right, thus far we discussed positioning, hook, and story, brain dump, outline creation. Now let's talk about the marketing plan. What is the life cycle of this product going to be? And what would both parties be happy with as a result? So in the marketing plan, there's 4 things that I consider. The first is revenue projection. The second is primary producer. The third is secondary producers towards that revenue projection. And the fourth is the long-term focus on what this product is going to achieve. So in this video, we're going to break down the first of this, and then in the subsequent videos, we'll break down the rest of them. So let's talk about revenue projection. There are 3 things that I consider with revenue projection. The first one is, and this is important, of knowing how we're going to do the marketing for a particular product, is gross minus cost equals net. Now that's obvious, but there's some finer points that we should discuss within this. So first of all, we want to revenue project the product itself. And you can use the spreadsheet that's provided in Product E-Class Ultima to make that happen. But we also want to project our own net. But we also have to understand that we're doing some bookkeeping here too. Here's what I mean by this. Say we work out a deal. A publisher-publishee deal that's 50-50, straight up. So for every dollar that comes in, 50 cents goes to the publisher and 50 cents goes to the publishee. Well, but who covers all the costs, and what's considered a cost and what is not considered a cost? Now, there's engineers out there who want to account for every single tiny little fraction of any penny whatsoever. So that way, if anybody else does anything related, then they have to figure it out and share the cost of anything and everything. That's completely impractical. You'll never close a deal in your life if you get that insane with it. So the real spirit is to get as close to, if you're splitting 50-50, everything is split 50-50, including the cost, as close as possible, while still being reasonable and pragmatic. Now that is from a deal perspective. From a revenue projection perspective, in terms of how much could this product generate? And what will we both be happy with, right? Then you just basically want to take gross minus obvious big costs. So if there's like 3 items that are going to take up 95% of your total costs, we don't have to worry about the remaining 26 items that are going to contribute to the other 5% of your cost. So when I say how are costs calculated, we can call something a cost or we can call it not a cost. And who is responsible for each and every cost, and how's that kind of included? Just be very obviously reasonable about this whole thing, so that way it's very simple for both parties to understand, and there can be some give and take one way or the other if it comes up later that they weren't completely understanding. Now, the thing, too, is like if you want to be aware of that on every scenario, this is how much you should expect, give or take a little bit, to take home. This is how much I should, give or take, expect to bring home as well. So this is therefore what we want to get out of this project together. So before either of you do any real serious work, you get an idea of doing this project together will make me X number of money in Y number of days, and it will make you X number of money in Y number of days. We start with the revenue projection, because if we don't have a target to hit, where should we aim? Second thing, great, acceptable. I like to do both projections. So spec out the full potential, but also run a scenario that is more likely to occur and make sure that that's still acceptable. The problem is everybody, it's actually not a problem. It's a survival mechanism. People who are depressed are much more accurate at assessing their own abilities than people who are not depressed. If you're a good functional member of society that does not suffer from depression, and by the way, there's many functional members who are depressed, and there's very many non-functional members who aren't depressed. But let's just take it in the means of, if you're happy, the chances of you overestimating your own abilities is high. And that's good. It's a survival mechanism. For a standard individual that's not suffering from depression, they overestimate their abilities. That's just how it is. That's why 7 out of 10 people say they're better than the average driver. And 9 out of 10 people say they're more intelligent than the average person. 9 out of 10. More intelligent than the average person. Impossible, but nonetheless, self-assessment, right? So while we all think everything is going to go perfect every single time, because the joke is this, like I was talking with a guy who hired somebody, and then he says, it was a bad hire. He goes, but at the time, I thought it was a good hire. I go, I would hope so. I wouldn't want you to tell me I knew going in this was a bad hire, right? So acceptable and great is why we revenue project both. we say, hey, if everything goes well, or if this is what I think we can do, this is what it should look like. However, even if some of this stuff doesn't see through, and even if we have some weird stuff occur, or it doesn't pan out the way we're thinking, what could be more close to how a normal project operates? Even though this one isn't normal, this one is the exceptional one, right? What could that look like? So run that thing that says in a general scenario, not best case scenario, this is what this could look like. Are you still cool with that? Should we still move forward even if we hit this number at the end of the day and not that bigger number? That's perfect. Because if you don't get that up front, then you're gonna be very thankful you didn't have to go through the whole rigmarole of dealing with that later on. And secondly, it's going to affect exactly how you're going to plan on marketing the product as well. And then lastly, adjust. So very often it is unlikely the first time you put anything on paper for a revenue projection that it will be perfect and make sense. It'll usually be a lot lower than you like, because we go through the easy stuff first, and then we make the refinement. We go back, say, okay, what if I did this instead of that? What if I did this instead of that? And then we get that number up to where it's both acceptable and great. We get both of those numbers, but we've increased it so it's a big number that's good for us, a bigger number, and it's actually more doable because we went through and said, okay, now if I made that adjustment and did this instead of that, this is how much better it would affect revenue. And if I did that instead of this, it would take less time but would make the same amount of money. So all these things combined are very powerful. Now, depending on the relationship you have with the other person involved in this publisher deal, is going to determine whether you do this revenue projection with them together, or if you do this on your own and then present it to them when it's all said and done. In either case, the adjustment process usually looks like this. You would sit down on day one and revenue project. Then you would sleep on it after you came up with a number that you thought was happy. And then you go through one more iteration of it on day two, the next day, after you had slept on it overnight, to see it again with fresh eyes in the morning and get your final thing and then sign off on it and make it good. And then go out there, now that you have your revenue projection, and start implementing it. In the next video, I'm going to specifically help you with both revenue projection as well as just in general, focusing on that one thing in any promotion that's likely to get the best result.